It is a Sunday morning, and Raymond is sitting at the kitchen table in yesterday's clothes, staring at his phone. His coffee is cold. The television in the next room is playing something his son left on before falling asleep on the couch. And the article Raymond is reading has just told him that the average American in their mid-40s has a net worth approaching $1 million. Raymond is 46. Raymond does not have $1 million. Raymond has a 401k he opened 15 years ago and contributed to inconsistently, a mortgage with 19 years remaining, a car loan he refinanced twice, and a credit card balance he keeps telling himself is temporary. He does the rough math in his head, and the number he arrives at is nowhere close to 7 figures. So Raymond sits there in the Sunday morning quiet, doing what millions of people his age do when they encounter that statistic. He wonders whether he is the problem. Here is what this video is going to tell him and you. The headline number is not real, and the real number, while considerably less comfortable, comes with something the headline version does not: an honest picture of where you actually stand and a clear path for what to do about it. The figure you keep encountering, the one suggesting the average 45-year-old is sitting on close to $1 million, is technically produced by real data. It is also almost completely useless as a personal benchmark, and understanding why is the most important thing in this entire video. The number is an average, not a median, an average. When you calculate average net worth, you add every household's total wealth together and divide by the number of households. The problem with this method is that extreme wealth at the very top inflates the result dramatically for everyone else in the pool. A relatively small number of households with net worths in the tens or hundreds of millions pulls the average upward in a way that has nothing to do with the financial reality of the person sitting in the middle. The median tells a completely different story. The median is the number you get when you line every household up from least to most wealthy and look at the one standing exactly in the center. That person is your actual peer. That is your honest benchmark. For Americans aged 45 to 54 in 2026, the median net worth sits at approximately $247,000. Not $1 million, not even close. The enormous gap between the average and the median exists entirely because concentrated wealth at the top pulls the calculated average into a range that describes almost nobody actually living in the middle of the distribution. When a financial headline tells you the average 45-year-old is nearly a millionaire, what it is doing is blending your situation with people who own private equity stakes, multi-property portfolios, and generational business wealth, and presenting that blend as though it describes a typical household. It does not. The median describes a typical household, and the median is roughly $250,000. Before we go further, do something slightly uncomfortable. Add up every asset you own right now: your retirement accounts, any investment accounts, savings, and a reasonable estimate of your home equity if you own. Then subtract everything you owe: the mortgage balance, the car loan, the credit card debt, the student loans, all of it. The resulting number is your net worth. Write it down. Here's the real scoreboard for a 45-year-old in 2026. If your number is below $50,000, you are in the bottom quarter of Americans your age. That's a difficult position, but a common one. Roughly 1 in 4 households around this age is in that range. If your number sits around $247,000, you are the median. You are mathematically in the exact center. If you are around $680,000, you're in the top 25%, genuinely ahead of most people your age. And if you are above $1.4 million, you're in the top 10%. Most people who do this exercise are somewhere between the bottom quarter and the median, and most of them feel behind. What they do not know yet is that the number they calculated almost certainly contains a hidden problem, one that makes the situation look better on paper than it actually is in practice. Here is what almost no one explains when these statistics get discussed. For the typical 45-year-old, 60 to 70% of their entire net worth is locked inside their home, not in investment accounts, not in liquid savings, in the walls and the roof and the drywall of a house they still live in. Take Raymond's median $247,000 net worth. Subtract the home equity he has accumulated since buying a decade ago, call it $150,000 to $160,000, and what remains for everything else is roughly $85,000 to $90,000. That is the cushion between Raymond and a genuine financial emergency. That is his retirement savings, his investment accounts, his emergency fund, and his financial margin combined. And here's the part that matters most. Home equity is not accessible money. You cannot pay a medical bill with home equity. You cannot use it to cover 3 months of expenses if a job disappears. To convert it into actual usable cash, you would have to sell the house and still need somewhere to live, take out a loan against it at current interest rates, or refinance and extend the mortgage further into the future. None of these options are free. None of them are simple. The median net worth of $247,000 sounds like a meaningful financial cushion. Once you understand that most of it is locked in an illiquid asset, the real picture is considerably more exposed than the headline number suggests. Now let us talk specifically about retirement savings, because this is where the gap between where most people are and where most benchmarks say they should be becomes most visible. A widely used financial guideline suggests that by age 50, a person should have saved approximately 6 times their annual salary in retirement accounts. For someone earning close to the median household income, call it $115,000 for a 2-income household, that benchmark translates to roughly $700,000 in retirement savings by the time they turn 50. The actual median 401k balance for Americans aged 45 to 54 is approximately $60,000, not $600,000, not $700,000, $60,000. That gap between where most people are and where the benchmark says they should be is not small. It represents a structural shortfall that affects the majority of households in this age range, and roughly 35 to 40% of households in their mid-40s to mid-50s have essentially no retirement savings at all. Not a small balance, zero. This is not primarily a story about individual irresponsibility. It is a story about a generation that entered their peak earning years just as the cost of housing, healthcare, education, and childcare accelerated faster than wages did. The benchmarks were written for economic conditions that no longer exist in the same form. Hitting 6 times your salary by 50 requires a combination of income, savings rate, and market timing that the majority of real households never had access to simultaneously. Net worth is assets minus liabilities. We've looked at the asset side. The liability side is equally important and equally underreported. The average 45-year-old American is carrying a total debt load that would surprise most people who have not looked at the aggregate data. Mortgage debt, auto loans, credit card balances, and for a meaningful portion of this age group, student loan debt that is either their own from graduate school or parent loans taken to help children through college. That last category is particularly costly, carrying interest rates that rival credit cards and offering almost none of the flexibility or forgiveness options available on other loan types. Credit card balances at this age average nearly $10,000, sitting at interest rates now averaging above 20%. For a household with that balance making minimum payments, the credit card is growing faster than the retirement account. The interest accumulating on the debt is outpacing the compounding happening on the investment. That is the financial treadmill that keeps Raymond checking his phone on Sunday mornings. Add it all together, and the typical 45-year-old household is carrying somewhere between $150,000 and $170,000 in total debt. Net worth built up on one side, systematically reduced by obligations on the other. There is a specific demographic reality that makes the financial picture of today's 45-year-old uniquely pressured. And it doesn't get discussed often enough. More than half of Americans in their 40s are currently providing financial support in two directions simultaneously. Upward toward aging parents who need care, assistance, or housing that their own retirement savings cannot fully cover. Downward toward children who are either still in the household, still in college, or returning home after college ends. Some households are doing both at once, writing checks for assisted living on one end while covering cell phone bills and groceries for a 23-year-old on the other. This is not a lifestyle choice. It is a structural financial reality for a generation positioned between two others who both need something from them at the same time. The money that might otherwise be compounding in a retirement account is instead covering gaps that the people on either side of them cannot fill themselves. Raymond's situation, the mortgage, the car loan, the credit card, the inconsistent retirement contributions, is not a personal failure. It is an almost entirely predictable outcome of the specific financial pressures concentrated in this decade of life. Here is what matters now. The net worth you calculated at the beginning of this video is not your verdict. It is your starting point for the next 20 years. At 45, you have approximately 2 decades before a conventional retirement age. That is not an unlimited runway, but it is not a closed window either. A dollar invested today at historical market returns has meaningful time to compound before it needs to be drawn on. The question is not whether you are where the benchmarks say you should be. The question is what you do with the time that remains. Even modest but consistent increases in retirement contributions from this point forward produce outcomes that are dramatically different from doing nothing. Someone who increases their monthly retirement contribution by $500 to $700 starting at 45 and maintains that increase for 20 years arrives at 65 in a substantially different position than someone who waits until 50 or 55 to make the same adjustment. The math of compounding rewards earlier action significantly, even when earlier means 45 rather than 35. The most valuable financial move most people at this age can make is the simplest one: automate an increase. Set a contribution rate that feels slightly uncomfortable. Schedule it to happen before the money touches the checking account, then do not look at it for 6 months. The discomfort of slightly less monthly cash flow is the price of future financial margin, and it is a price that compounds in your favor with every passing year you pay it. Raymond finished his coffee eventually. He put his phone down, woke his son up, and they went to get breakfast together. The article is still sitting in his browser history. But here is what Raymond understands now that he did not when the morning started. The number that bothered him, the average 45-year-old approaching $1 million, was never describing him. It was describing a statistical blend that includes people whose financial reality has almost no overlap with his. The number that actually describes Raymond is $247,000. He is exactly the median. He is in the middle, and the middle is not the end of the story. It's just where the story currently is. The finish line that matters is not a comparison to some aggregate statistic designed to make financial content feel urgent. The finish line is a retirement that is funded, a financial position that can absorb disruption without crisis, and a decade of decisions made with clear eyes rather than anxiety produced by numbers that were never real to begin with. Raymond's net worth today is not the number that defines him. The number that defines him is the one sitting in his account at 65, built from the decisions he makes between now and then, starting this Monday morning before he has even finished his second cup of coffee. If this gave you a clearer picture of where you actually stand and what to do about it, share it with someone who needs to see the honest numbers. And if you want to keep going deeper into the financial decisions that shape how everything turns out, stick around. That's exactly what this channel is built for.